quality drop.
Arsenal have been doing bits as well. They have signed Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad. That news is official, and it looks as though they are very close to getting Victor Gyokeres from Sporting as well. As we know, one of their main priorities this summer has been bringing in a striker, and it looks as though Gyokeres could be that man. Jules, what more can you tell us about this deal?
Yeah, that's right, Kay. This is moving forward very well. We talked about it a little bit the last time I was on the show, which was maybe on Sunday night, I think it was, or we Sunday today. I can't remember really, but a few days ago, and then we wrote it on the website as well. Talks between the player and Arsenal pretty much all done. Between the two clubs, which is always going to be quite difficult because we explained there was a release clause for Gyokeres, 100 million euros, but then he kind of agreed a gentleman agreement with the club saying that he could leave for less than that, around the 60 to 70 million euros fee, which they are about to agree. The structure is still a little bit up in the air, whether it's 60 plus 10, 65 plus 5 or 7, some bonuses that should be easily reachable. That's what Sporting wants. So we're not just there yet, but it should not be too long now before Victor Gyokeres is officially an Arsenal player.
That could change things very much for Arsenal this year, Craig.
Well, Mikel Arteta hopes so. It's a kind of an admittance, and right or wrong, that the initial plan didn't really work for him and hasn't taken them to the level that they needed, which was signing Kai Havertz, ironically, to start with, to play in the midfield as a midfield three, which didn't really work, and with Gabriel Jesus up front, and then he was shuffled Havertz up top and did a decent enough job at times with his movement and his work rate and the odd goal, but not enough to get Arsenal near enough to City or over the line, and certainly not enough to get anywhere close to Liverpool last year. So I think the club realising that, and I think have done for quite some time, there was a sort of softball bid for Ollie Watkins in January last year that I don't think was ever going anywhere. But Benjamin Sesko's been on the list, Gyokeres has been on the list. I suppose Alexander Isak was a player that Arsenal had looked at amongst others. But Gyokeres seems to be the one that the deal was going to be slightly easier to do. Scored a barrel load of goals in Portugal. He's more of a sort of penalty box striker, big guy, big physical enough guy, naturals goal scorer, hustle bustle kind of player, a little bit of everything. So, if he gets this deal done along with the Zubimendi deal, in the last 2 or 3 years, they really have backed this manager, haven't they? With transfer fees and transfer funds and recruitment. And I think this just piles the pressure on for Arsenal to go this season and deliver.
Is this the final piece of the puzzle, these players coming in?
Gyokeres, I saw a lot at Coventry, and he's a player, and you described him quite well in terms of that he's a bit of everything. He was at his best when I saw him play, when balls were rolled into him around the box and he'd twist and turn. He could score goals by himself. He didn't just always play backwards. He'd try and turn defenders, roll defenders, get shots away. He's a good box player as well. He'll find that bit of space in the box. So I think it's a good signing. Now, we do a lot of La Liga, and Craig has seen a lot of La Liga. You have as well. I've watched Zubimendi on many, many occasions, and I've only ever seen him really dominate a game once, and that was in the final of the European Championships when he came on as a substitute. I don't understand what all the fuss is about with Zubimendi. He's a nice footballer.
Tidy.
He's tidy. He's a nice footballer. It's Jorginho of 5 years ago. He'll get the ball, pass it square, keep it all flowing. But I don't think I've ever seen him play a forward pass that's caused a problem.
But going back to Gyokeres quickly, I know he had this spell at Coventry. His game has to have taken to whether it's the league in Portugal or not, and he's played in the Champions League and all that sort of stuff, so he's playing at a much better level. The Portuguese league is not the Premier League, we know that, so it is going to be more difficult, but his game has to have gone from a much different level from his time at Coventry to where he's been, particularly in the last 12 months.
If you're an Arsenal fan, are you not looking across at Liverpool and looking at Núñez? But Núñez was the same at Benfica. He scored a barrel load of goals. And on paper, Núñez was a great signing for Liverpool. As Gyokeres looks like, on paper, a great signing for Arsenal. The question is,
why when he was at Coventry, why when he was at Swansea, did managers not go, I tell you what, this player can go the distance? Why did he have to go to Portugal to get all those goals and prove himself as a top-class player to get back into the Premier League? Why didn't people see him at Coventry?
I'd have to go back and look at the Núñez, which I haven't got, the Núñez figures. I do think, I might be wrong.
They're not as good as...
But Darwin Núñez, I think...
But you can see my argument,
yeah.
though, right?
No, I know, but coming into that season before he went to Liverpool, he had a standout season. I think if you look beyond that, his goal-scoring record wasn't like blisteringly good, Núñez, but then he did have that really good season that put him on the radar. I think Gyokeres has been a little bit more consistent.
Well, he's had 2 great seasons, hasn't he? I mean, he's almost scored a goal a game in the last 2 seasons.
But you have to, if you're an Arsenal fan, you have to be excited by this because you're looking for a goal scorer. On the face of it, you've got a goal scorer. You plug in some other areas. There's probably going to be at least another signing, maybe 2. They're linked with a couple of other players. So, and it's pretty early, and one of the worrying things is for any club is that it's the middle of August, the season started, and you're still chasing around trying to get this player.
When Jesus came, Arteta said we don't really need a centre forward. When Jesus came from Manchester City, for the first 6 months, he was absolutely magnificent and took Arsenal to the top of the table. And that's when they were playing at their very best. And then he got injured and didn't play quite so well. So maybe this is the final product.
Well, let's take a look at how that Arsenal team might be shaping up now. Jules, we've tasked you with putting together an 11 of how Arsenal could fare this season with these players in that 11. Talk us through it.
It's pretty straightforward, really. There's just nothing. Zubimendi would come in and replace Partey, and Gyokeres would come in and replace Havertz. So, whoever finished the season there when he was injured. The rest is pretty normal, pretty straightforward. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Luis Kelly, or you could put Calafiori at left back if you want. That midfield of Odegaard, Rice will be the same, just with that Zubimendi as the holding midfielder to try to control the game. And then for now, Martinelli at left winger, but we know they're also looking at a left winger. So it might not be Martinelli if they get the player they want for that left-hand side, and then Gyokeres centrally and Bukayo Saka on the right. So there won't be any tactical revolution. There won't be any twist and things that we might see from Arteta tactically, I think, both in terms of personnel and tactically. It's just very straightforward, that 4-3-3, and those 2 players for now just fit perfectly in that system.
There's been, sorry. I was going to say, there's been talk today about Madueke. I don't know, is there any truth in that, Jules?
Yeah, I think Arteta has liked him for a while now. Even last summer, he was already kind of like monitoring a little bit the situation. The thing is, Madueke, as a left footer, best position is on the right. So he would come as a plan B for Saka, or the guy coming after Saka. You don't spend 50 million on somebody that would be a sub for somebody else. So then you can play him on the left, but Madueke as a left footer on the left, I don't think has the same impact than he has on the right-hand side. 1, the right-hand side is his favourite position. 2, he can come inside onto his left foot like a lot of left footer who play on the right do. So I'm not really sure where Madueke would fit. But then, yeah, of course, you can play him on the left-hand side even as a left footer.
So is it Madueke or Eze, or could it be Madueke and Eze? Because
one of the 2, I think.
Yeah, because that really would be. Because we were talking about Eze. I know he's not in this conversation till now.
How does that make them better?
Who?
Madueke. How does he make them better? You're going to play him on the wrong side, and what's going to happen to Wanyeri? I thought Wanyeri was the backup for Saka.
Okay,
so
hold that thought.
I actually thought Eze would be. Sorry, I actually thought Eze as a signing would be more of a push for Martin Odegaard than he would have been for Martinelli. At times we were critical of Odegaard last year, who is a big. I mean, he's the captain. He's a big player for them. He's in a big position, and at times in the bigger games, particularly last year, he had his poorer games. And I felt that the signing of Eze would fill both roles potentially, because we've talked about him. He's not a guy who likes to stand on the wide position. He likes to come in and play in those holes. He likes to play passes. He likes to get turned, and he's very good at finishing as well. His final third is very, very good. And I thought that signing could probably cover a couple of roles where he could supplement the wider area if need be, or if Martin Odegaard. Because everybody's droppable. Don't matter if you're the captain of Arsenal. If you're not doing it week in, week out, and you're going for a title and you're going for the Champions League, you're droppable. And I think he needs somebody to push him in that number 10 role.
Where does that leave Moreno then? I mean, so
as a squad player coming off the bench, which a very good one.
So the 11 we just showed you. What I was going to ask you, Frank, is if this is a Premier League title-winning team for you.
I think it's possible if the new signing click on. They can pretend to be contenders, and with the depth that they have on the bench, it can be good. We all know that we want to see if they sign Gyokeres, if he can score goals, because that was the main concern. I just want to answer to say something about about what Robo said about the fact that in Coventry or Swansea, he didn't show the level he should have been to interest some of the other team. But don't forget that Mo Salah or De Bruyne came for Chelsea and didn't show their talent before going back somewhere else.
Sorry, Frank, I wasn't saying he
some
didn't
years
show. I wasn't saying he didn't show his talent. I'm saying other coaches or other scouts or other managers didn't see him or didn't make the decision on him. And that's when they should have made the decision because they'd have got him £30 million cheaper.
Okay, I thought it was more because of his performances that you were saying.
No, he was good.
But,
he was good for Coventry.
I hear you. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, it's what I thought, and he should have been picked before. But otherwise, yeah, I think if Gyokeres score goals, you have definitely a team who can be a contender.
Easily make an argument and say, yeah, that team could win the title. Of course they could win the title. They could have won it over the last, they couldn't, not last year, because they were out the race. The year before, they could have won it. It just fell a bit short. You could put the Liverpool team up and say, yeah, that team will win the title. You put the City team up and say, well, maybe so. Maybe there's a couple of areas there that they still are worried. Any of these teams could win the title. What they had last year was some injuries and some underperformances, and obviously they lacked a real goal-scoring threat. So absolutely.
That team, if they all play to a certain standard that they're capable of, that team absolutely has got a chance of winning the Premier League.
And there's a much better bench when you saw the players that were down there. Suddenly, if they want to make changes, the changes are better than they were last year.
Well, you look at the changes we made last year. Some of them, I mean, one of them, Raheem Sterling. Yeah, that was just a bust as a loan signing, wasn't it? He was on the bench. He played now and again. He came on now and again. I mean, can you remember anything that he did? So it's been hugely important to strengthen a bit. It's one of the things Liverpool did particularly well. When you looked at the Liverpool bench last year, Arne Slot was able to go and make changes that made a difference. And I don't think Mikel Arteta...
Go back a couple of years with Mikel Arteta when he had Willian. He brought Willian to the club, and the only place he failed really was at Arsenal because he then went to Fulham and became a good player again. So he struggled at Arsenal for some reason.
So, Jules, in your 11, there's no Kai Havertz, right?
No, there's no Kai Havertz for now. I mean, if you spend that money on Gyokeres, he's your number 9. Then with Havertz, the versatility is interesting because he can be another option as a number 9. You can even, if you're behind, if you're losing, you can tweak your system and Havertz comes in and play higher up as a second striker if you want. With Gyokeres, he can play in midfield where we've said enough time with Craig, especially on the show, that originally, Kai Havertz was signed to be the Granit Xhaka replacement, to play in that number 8 on the left-hand side with Rice deeper and Odegaard on the right. That was the idea at the beginning. Didn't turn out that way, didn't really work out. So then he did a decent job, as we've been saying, as a number 9. But Havertz offers you so much versatility that I think as a first sub, he'd be perfect. And then there's games where he will start. There will be so many games next season for Arsenal that he will have enough game time. It's not a problem. But for now, Gyokeres will have to be the standout striker and starter.
I don't think there's any Arsenal fan going round going, whoa, I think we need to squeeze Kai Havertz in somewhere. But I do agree. You know, and it's a lot of money, 60 million or whatever it was. But, you know, Kai Havertz, I think, for Arsenal, for a potential championship winning side, is a really good player to have on the bench for all the reasons that Jules mentioned, is that he's versatile. He'll get his quota of goals without being a natural goal scorer. He works hard. He's got a great attitude. So he's a good player to play in games that you maybe want to give somebody a rest or bring on second half when you're struggling and you need something a little bit different, or even put 2 up front.
But when you look at the overall...
If he's happy with that. If he's happy with that.
Yeah. If you look at Havertz as his overall picture, there's a reason why he went to Arsenal. Because he didn't do well enough at Chelsea. Yeah. You know, when Chelsea bought him for a lot of money, he was going to be the star player. Everybody said he was one of the best players in the Bundesliga. He didn't really do it for Chelsea. I know they say he scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. Yeah, of course, great. But overall, his performances for Chelsea weren't good enough.
Anything else you want to say about this Arsenal side, Jules, seeing as though you've got such a close eye and a pulse on them?
No, just let's see what happens on that left-hand side. And we said the other day as well, they will have to sell before being able to buy Eze or Madueke, whoever they want. But it would be interesting. I think this is the last piece of that jigsaw. If you look at that team again, just to finish on that team, Martinelli is probably the one, if you can get an upgrade on Martinelli, a more established player, maybe a better player, simply, then I think you are even in a better position and Martinelli becomes yet another really good option to come off the bench.
Let's get to Zubimendi then. Obviously, Stuart touched on what he did and Craig as well. Let me stay with you, Jules, on this one, because obviously Arteta knows that he wants this player. He knows him well, and now he's got his hands on him. What is he going to do with him? What's the hope?
The hope is that holding role, really, and controlling, dictating the pace, which is what he's very good at in Spain. Can he do it in the Premier League with more physicality, with more intensity, with more rhythm? Nobody knows. We don't know. Arteta doesn't know. Zubimendi himself doesn't know. Obviously, the hope at 26 is that he's such a smart, intelligent player that he will adapt quickly to the way Arsenal play to start with, which is different to what Real Sociedad have been doing when he was there. And then obviously, more importantly, maybe adapt to the Premier League and the challenges that he will face in that league, because he's always been used to one thing, being Real Sociedad has been his club forever. There hasn't been even another club. So it's not even if he'd like been from Real Sociedad to another better Spanish club. It's just Real Sociedad, and it's a massive jump to the Premier League, to Arsenal. So let's see how quickly he settles. They wanted him ready for the trip that they have in Spain. They have a pre-season little few days in south of Spain first, and then they go on the proper tour in Southeast Asia. They wanted him there for that. He would be there. He would get to know everybody. And then everybody at the club is hoping that he would hit the ground running straight away.
I suppose these are the risks you take when you talk about whether they can deliver what they've been doing in their respective leagues in the Premier League when it comes to these players, including Gyokeres as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit with Robbo with Zubimendi. I mean, I'm glad we put a picture up of this guy, because I was trying to remember what he looked like. You know, he's not... To me, I've seen the guy when things are going well, when they've got plenty of possession, he's on the ball and he's facilitating and distributing it, and he's making little passes and cutting things out. I don't remember seeing him doing anything when his team have been up against it.
He's not dynamic. That's, you know, if he plays the holding role, and I talked about Jorginho when he first came to Chelsea, and I wasn't a big fan of Jorginho, and he'll keep the ball quite nicely, but I'm doing the commentary, you know, on the La Liga, and we've done it about 10 times last year, and I'll have a little joke with my commentator, how many times is he going to pass it forward? And I'll make little notes. He hardly ever passes it forward. There's no penetrative passes. There's no goal-scoring passes. He just keeps the thing flowing. There's lots of players that can do that, and you're paying a lot of money for a player that can just keep things moving along.
But
maybe he hopes he's just going to be the glue.
Maybe.
The glue's the back four and the pass out from the fullback to get the move flowing and to allow Declan Rice and Odegaard to go and push a bit. Well, certainly Odegaard will, but Declan Rice, who we saw it more and more last year, just becoming more dynamic, and he can do both those roles. And just to give him a little bit of an insurance policy to go and be this guy who busts into the box as well. That's going to be a big role for Zubimendi. Because Rice, if you're giving Rice and Odegaard the licence to go and get forward, and you're going to have a lot of possession, then you're going to have your head switched on in front of that Arsenal back four for the counter-attack. So it's a big big role for this player coming in. He's certainly tidy enough on the ball. Whenever you watch Real Sociedad, he never ever stands out like a sore thumb, right? But maybe that's not a bad thing. He's just tidy under the radar, and he lets other people get on with the job.
The question is going to be what you were talking about there. If you're going to let Odegaard get forward and you're going to have Rice getting forward, the one thing that you know, Arsenal are going to pen teams in. And so the biggest problem City have got right now is when teams get out, they don't have anybody in the middle of the park to stop them. I don't see how this guy stops him. I don't see how he gets...
He's no more athletic, I don't think, than Jorginho was.
He's not quick around the field.
He's not the same as Rodri. He's not going to be as good defensively as Rodri for Manchester City.
That's my problem with it.
And you've got to be, in my view, if you're a holding midfielder, even if you're good on the ball, you have to be a good athlete. You've got to cover fullbacks. You've got to cover the midfield players that have gone forward. You might have to drop in between your centre halves at times. I don't see him do that. No.
What do you think of what the guys are saying, Frank?
Well, I was more positive before the show than I am now, listening to the guys. You know, that guy won the Euro, plays for Spain, is going to sign for Arsenal for 60 million. And when I hear somebody who don't know, he's under the radar, he's not under the radars, he's in the shade, he doesn't do vertical passes. The guy seems to be completely useless, so I want to give a little bit more credit to the product. So I won't be as judgmental as the guys have been, where they know him better than me. But hopefully, you know, if he plays for Spain, if he's going to play for Arsenal, he will have some influence into the game. Otherwise, of course, that's going to be useless to spend 60 million for a player who only do horizontal passes.
Jules, what do you make of these Jorginho comparisons?
Yeah, no. I completely agree with Robo. I think, yeah, that you can make that comparison. I think if it's a player that Real Madrid wanted to sign and hijack the deal to Arsenal that's been agreed a while ago, and if Manchester City looked at him as well to sign him when Rodri got injured, there's a player there too. But the question is, outside of the fact that of his profile and the defensive aspect in transition when Arsenal don't have the ball, because Arsenal we often have 65-70% of the ball in the Premier League still, is how quickly or how can he, not even not quickly, can he adapt to the Premier League? This is the big question. He might do it and surprise us, or some of us. He might struggle a little bit at the beginning, but I think the most important, and we said that the other day as well, for Gyokeres, for Zubimendi, for whoever comes in that left wing position, it doesn't matter. They will have to be ready straight away. Arsenal cannot wait 6 months for Zubimendi to be ready to play in the Premier League, because by then, as we said the other day, the title will be lost, the Champions League might be lost as well. So Zubimendi has to be ready straight away, and that adaptation will have to be really quick and will have to be very good. And again, I just don't think he's got much time for it. So let's see how quickly he can adapt, because you can't wait that long for him to get ready. It doesn't work like this.
Just to be clear, we're not saying that he's not a great football player. We're not saying he's not a good player. But we're talking about Arsenal. The question here is, does this Arsenal team win the Premier League? We're talking about winning the Premier League here. And so the points that we're pulling out basically are, if he does those things that certainly I'm not sure he can do, if he does them, then it makes the chances of Arsenal winning the Premier League even better. All I'm saying is, to win the Premier League, what he's going to have to do defensively, if he's not capable of it, that could be the difference between them not winning the Premier League. So we're not saying he's not a good player. We're just saying, to take that extra step, he has to do certain things. But we don't know whether he's going to do it.
The difference between Arsenal and City, though, is, and when City got exploited last year many, many times, was they really didn't have much of a structure as the season unravelled. They had no structure in the middle of the park. They had no structure generally in their defensive unit, and the back four just was a shambles in the end, the two full-back positions. You could throw the centre-halves in there as well. The one thing Zubimendi and others have got going for them is that Arsenal have a really good structure about how they press and how they then sometimes set off. Yep. And when he is struggling, if he is struggling, he's got arguably one of the best back fours in European football that's behind him. And also, I think Declan Rice, and I think we all agree, he's been well worth the money.
Absolutely.
For Arsenal, what they paid for him. There's just a heck of a player in there. You know, he's not... All right, he scored those 2 goals in the Champions League. But generally, he's not going to do the overhead kicks and all that sort of stuff. But generally, everything he does defensively and offensively is very good. And he's been around the block enough times now that if he sees a player coming in and he's having a hard time, or he's getting swamped in the middle of the park, he'll just sit in there, Declan Rice, and say, listen, I got you back for the meantime until we're in a comfortable position. So it's not like he's going to be in there on his own. Yeah. He's got Odegaard, who's an attacking player, and he's got Declan Rice, who's one of the best around, not just in England, but in Europe, at doing both sides of the game.
Arteta thinks he's got a mixture of all three with these 3 players. He's got the dynamism with Rice. He's got, hopefully, the passing ability of Odegaard, and he's hoping the continuity of Zubimendi, just picking out the passes and keeping everything going. So that's what he's hoping for, that those 3 mixtures work really well.
As you know, Bayern Munich's Jamal Musiala suffered a serious injury during the quarter-final match-up versus PSG in the Club World Cup yesterday. There's been an outpouring of support for the player, wishing him a speedy recovery. There's been a bit of a back and forth as well, and some discourse even in the studio as to what Manuel Neuer had to say about this with you guys. Anyway, here is another goalkeeper who's waded in on it. It's Thibaut Courtois, who said, blaming Donnarumma seems excessive to me. Goalkeepers will go for the ball. Attackers don't hold back when they come towards us either. It's a stroke of bad luck. It hurts him, Neuer, more because it's his teammate, but Donnarumma isn't responsible.
So, keep me up to speed here. You mentioned the word discourse in the studio. Where are we? Where are we on the discourse?
Jan Fjortov said Neuer had every right to be upset because he was defending his teammate and all this sort of stuff. And we all argued that Donnarumma wasn't at fault for this. Right. Donnarumma had every right to go to the ball.
Neuer said you don't have to go in like that.
Neuer, when I saw this quote, actually, yesterday, and by the way, the game, particularly the last 20 minutes of that game, was just bonkers as PSG got 2 sent off. This was absolute. Manuel Neuer is. Sometimes players just open their mouth, and I get the emotion. Sometimes we've all unfortunately seen players on the field with a bad injury. But as Robert said, anybody watching that knew that a goalkeeper coming out fast to stop a play is not a new thing. He had absolutely it's an occupational hazard, unfortunately, that these incidents happen. And it was a really bad dislocation by the looks of it. But Manuel Neuer here is talking the biggest load of nonsense. He should know better.
And he's got a very short memory, because there's a game against Leverkusen where he got sent off in the cup, where he comes for a ball over the top, he comes charging out, and he's got his knee and his foot high up against the centre forward, whoever it was, I can't remember at the time, and he gets himself sent off. And he's, okay, I've got sent off. That was reckless, that was dangerous. What Donnarumma did, he had to go for the ball, and he didn't do anything wrong.
That's akin to saying another player's, he hasn't intently caused it, but he's basically said, you've caused that by an action that you didn't need to do. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
He's the only person on the planet that thinks that.
No,
and the chief executive.
No,
that's 3 people.
Oh, wait a minute.
Jan Nagelsmann.
Oh, Jan, sorry, Jan.
Oh, sorry, they're to do with Bayern, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a shock. I mean, I don't understand, what does Neuer think that Donnarumma's supposed to do? The one way you will get hurt is if you don't go fully. So what's Donnarumma supposed to go? He's talking about, he shouldn't have gone for it that way. Or is he talking about he should have went for it half-hearted? What is he talking about? It's just complete garbage. It's just one of those things. It's unfortunate, and he's opened his trap.
And Donnarumma feels bad about it himself.
Well,
it's only going to make things worse. Now he's going to have half the German population against him, and because he was booed every time he got the ball, it's not going to go down well.
No, he's a big lad.
Do you agree with the guys, Frank?
I do. When I saw that coming, I screamed because I saw Musiala keeping on going, and I saw his leg coming down or below Donnarumma. But Donnarumma goes for the ball. I mean, it takes more risk for a goalkeeper to go like that because he has to dive and he has to put his head on the level of the legs of the players. So it's very dangerous for goalkeepers. But you cannot blame him. You can blame Pickford on Van Dijk's injury, but you cannot blame Donnarumma on Musiala injury. I'm sad for Musiala. We know the history of the player, just came back, blah, blah, blah. But Donnarumma just did his job. And I saw that on networks, social networks. And I say, people are so stupid. The guy is a professional player. He goes for the ball. He has to dive. And the consequences of his dive made Musiala's injuries, but not on purpose. That's absolutely, as Stevie said, unfortunate.
So, Jules, what do Bayern do now? Because Jamal Musiala is going to be out for an extended period. Leroy Sané's gone. Muller's ended his career with Bayern. What happens next for them?
They need to recruit, but the problem is they've struggled really this summer to get the players that they want, or just even players full stop, to strengthen that squad really even more now with the departures, with the injuries, all of that. We're not sure what's going to happen with Sacha Boey, for example, who's not a starter but can play right back, left back, as we saw in the PSG game. And if he goes, then he will also have to be replaced. Stanisic picked up an injury in that PSG game. It's a hamstring injury, so that's no problem. But still, you need more numbers, you need more bodies. And from Nico Williams to Bradley Barcola, they've tried already many players to play on that left-hand side to replace Sané in terms of a number in the squad. Could not get anybody. Now they need that left winger. They need a number 10. They need probably, to be fair, another striker as well, considering Müller has left and Müller could play as a 10, as a second striker. Matistel has been sold to Spurs too. So you could argue they short 3 players in attacking position just to start with that, let alone maybe another defensive midfielder, let alone maybe another defender. Palhinha is on his way out too. So, and we are mid-July already, pretty much. So there's urgency massively for Bayern to sign players now.
Football's an ironic business, isn't it? Because here we have one of the most talented players in world football, Jamal Musiala, has been for a good 3 years or so now, maybe a bit more, who's going to be missing for half the season at least, unfortunately. And we saw and have seen for the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, Florian Wirtz at Bayer Leverkusen propel them to a title for all the will in the world, he was going to leave Leverkusen at some point and go to Bayern.
And the two wouldn't be able to play together, some people said, didn't they? But
Well,
it was rubbish anyway.
Yeah, well, you know, there was going to be an issue with the balance in the side if he went there, because you've got two sort of superstars. They have played together at Germany, but that's a different scenario. But he goes to Liverpool, albeit he said he wanted to go to Liverpool. But, you know, the noises coming from Bayern, Ole Hoeneß and all the usual cohorts where we're going to get Florian Wirtz. And then you lose the player that Florian Wirtz would have came straight in and replaced. It's an ironic business, but he would have been perfect for them as he is going to be for Liverpool. But you just don't have that crystal ball when you're in a football dressing room, because you don't know what's around the corner and what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is true. One thing we can find out what's going to happen on now, because we have Jules with us, is the Gab and Jules podcast, though, Jules. What's on the menu for the latest edition that's coming up?
It's tomorrow. We'll talk about the Club World Cup, obviously, because all those big games, the PSG Bayern game will be the main segment, and then a bit of Real Madrid previewing the semi-finals as well. Both very interesting ones between Fluminense and Chelsea, and PSG and PSG and Real Madrid, of course, the Mbappe derby.
Oh, okay, yeah, we look forward. And of course, those semis are coming up in the Club World Cup. Tuesday brings us Fluminense against Chelsea at 3 p.m. And Wednesday it is PSG taking on Real Madrid same time. All matches streaming live on DAZN. Tonight, the Gold Cup final offers up another edition of the USA facing Mexico. Mexico favourites coming into this 7 p.m. Eastern for this game. The 8th time the two nations have met in the final of 64 games, 52 goals, 32 assists, with Inter Miami in all competitions, and 2 trophies as well, all at the young years of 38. Lionel Messi. Inter Miami's win, pushing them up the Eastern Conference standings. Obviously, they've been playing in the Club World Cup. By contrast, however, Montreal really didn't need that result. They are down at the bottom, which is why you can't see them. In Group A in the Women's Euros today, we got to see Norway beat Finland 2-1. Switzerland also got a 2-0 win over Iceland, but it is Norway with 2 wins who sit top of Group A as it stands right now. And Football W will have you covered for all the women's action. It returns on Tuesday. Make sure to check it out on ESPN. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. Robbo's here, Craig's here, and Stevie's here too to answer your questions. There's some food questions in here.
You're doing a lot of rumbling around there. What's happening?
I know.
You're too much paraphernalia.
All my paraphernalia here in front of me.
Is that word used in
What
America?
about the questions? I don't know, actually.
It's a good word, paraphernalia.
Yes,
Paraphernalia.
they do.
Yes,
The
no.
producer tells me we do. Pete says we do use that word. Okay, for all.
He lives in America, does he?
Pete would know.
Yeah, he.
What planet?
During your time of playing football, was it common to go to an opposing locker room post-match to personally apologise and check in on a player that you've injured?
Well, I certainly didn't. I made a couple of bad challenges, not intentional challenges, but I hurt David Batty once badly. But I certainly wasn't going to go into the Leeds dressing room to apologise. And I also, unfortunately, broke the leg of Mark Chamberlain when he was playing for Sheffield Wednesday. But again, I didn't know it at the time. He carried on for 15 minutes. It was just a little toe on the shin. But yeah, at that time, you didn't go in and apologise. It was just one of those things.
Still got your face in the middle of a dartboard somewhere in England?
Well, I think probably the Leeds fans, I was lucky to get out alive because it cost Leeds the European Cup that year, or a chance to win the European Cup, because on the Wednesday night they were playing Rangers at home. And David Batty was obviously one of their key players, and they lost at home to 2-0. I think Mark Hateley scored a couple of goals. Do you remember that one?
No.
A few years ago?
Hateley scored one and assisted one for a one Mr. McCoist.
There we are. So yes, David Batty didn't play in that game and didn't play for another 6 months.
Were you the type to go and say sorry?
No, but I never. Don't laugh. I may have done had I've had.
He's never apologised in his life for anything.
I may take offence to this. I may have done if I'd caused somebody like a really bad injury, broken leg or something like that. As Robbo said, he didn't know at the time. If it had been super obvious and the player was getting stretched off and there was I may have done, but I didn't have. I was fortunate enough I wasn't involved in any of those incidents.
What was the story Jan was telling about you in Norway?
Tom Sundby, his name was.
Their star player, apparently, according to Jan.
Yeah, I made a challenge on it, and it wasn't I've made plenty of worse challenges. It was just a solid challenge, and unfortunately he did his knee and he never played again. But again, I didn't know either. If I'd known that at the time, I wouldn't have gone in the dressing room. You would find a way of making sure that you got a message to him or
do you
whatever.
think Graham Souness, your captain, would have gone into the opposition's dressing room and apologised for a tackle?
He would have gone in just to make sure that it needed a little bit more digging out.
My
what he would have
second
done.
ever game, we're playing Liverpool away, and there'd been an issue in the first game. It was a cup game, and Graham Souness looked up the tunnel and said to Peter Nicholas, "You won't last the game. You will not last the game." Peter Nicholas lasted 20 minutes, and the game's going on. I'm playing at right back, cross the ball, and everyone looks back. Peter Nicholas is on the halfway line, great big gash
What
down the
club
side.
was this?
That was Arsenal versus Liverpool.
Peter Nicholas.
Peter Nicholas.
Yeah, Nicholas.
I was at Chelsea with him when I was a kid.
And I don't think Graham Souness came into the dressing room.
If Graham had to go into the dressing room to apologise every time he'd made a bad
He'd be there every week.
He might as well just get changed in the away dressing room. He
He was ruthless.
he was a hard player, Graham.
Would you like to take the opportunity to apologise now on national television?
No, I actually met up with
You did.
Tom. I did, yeah, because I used
Oh,
to.
he's now Tom.
Yeah. Well, we're friends, aren't we?
Me and T.
We're all friends now.
You have
Met him in
shepherd's
Nor-
pie together?
I went and did a coaching.
No con.
I was doing a coaching school in Norway, in Oslo, and he actually came and we met up, and I apologised there and then. And he was.
So you
he
cost
was
him his
very
career.
generous.
You cost him millions of pounds.
Well, he was.
He now lives,
He was
in
a pity-
poverty.
He was
And
very magnanimous. He said,
It's
"It
a
wasn't
pity
your
there was
fault."
no
It was one of
camera
those-
there,
One of those
Robbo.
things.
It's a pity there was no camera there to film that. I'd really like to have
Yeah,
seen
I
that.
I hope you at least bought him a drink.
Don't be stupid.
No, he's never done that. He's Scottish.
All right, for the panel, who has had the worst recruitment in recent years? Manchester United with Sancho, Højlund, Anthony, or Chelsea with Lukaku, Kepa and Mudryk?
No, it's not even.
not even
it's
close.
not
No,
even
no,
a question.
it's not even
one
close.
one team at least has a chance to build with their younger players, right? And has numerous sellable assets. The other team, you could toss out 90% of the
I
dressing
think the
room.
question was about specific players, wasn't it? 3 players each, wasn't it?
Well, it's just whole
I
recruitment.
mean, they've offered up the players.
Oh, okay.
But I suppose if you look at the
Well,
recruitment as a whole,
Oh, as a whole, yeah.
you can.
Manchester United have been shocking, haven't
Yeah. All right. Did you?
At least Lukaku and Kepa have had periods where they've actually given something to their team.
they? Lukaku was a great. He just murdered the Italian league, and been brilliant. And then he came to Chelsea, and they played a totally different game under
And
Tuchel.
Kepa was all right for a good period. None of these United players have been any good for any period. Never any game, 90 minutes. So it's not even close.
Did you ever develop any interesting hobbies during the time in which you were injured during your football career?
Who's drinking?
I don't think that counts.
Does that count? No.
Listen, when you're injured, there's no time to do anything else. I went to a clinic, and you've been to the same sort of clinic. I was training 7 hours a day when I was injured. So that was your life, to get back fit. And I did that-
Willishaw.
No.
Willishaw?
No,
It's
no,
called-
I went
it's
to
called Bimal.
Bimal, which had all
As
the
it
top
was then.
athletes at the time and all the
Well,
Yeah,
and then,
rugby players.
well,
In that era, it was Lillishaw.
There was all the top athletes went there, and then Robbo and
I turned up as well.
Robbo and I. It was one of the. It wasn't a big place. It wasn't like a big place. It was tucked away in a little mews at the time.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
it
yeah.
was. But it was bespoke sort of rehab.
Yeah.
Up and with the most up to date techniques and all of that sort of stuff. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
So it was ahead of its time back then.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. A long way ahead of its time.
So in my era, it was Lillishaw, right? And it was mostly football players, but
Yeah.
there were a couple of other athletes, jockeys and stuff. And I organised a game of pool with a local pub. Our boys against them. And we got chucked out. Because this Welsh guy was trying to bust the bar. It was like one of those old-fashioned pubs, and it had wood everywhere on the bar.
Football
with
and drink
glasses
don't
on
go
it.
well together, do they?
And he was.
Sounds like
He
just
had
like
too
the news
many.
that you guys were
He
going
had too
to.
many, and he was trying to pull it off and break it. And the guy chucked us all out. We got banned for the pub down the road from where we were supposed to be rehabbing.
I don't know who Craig trained with at this.
I do believe I still have the record at Lillishaw.
Lillishaw, yes.
20 years that record stood. Hey?
We need to set a new
What we
record
do?
on the rowing.
Huh?
Doing
What am I doing now? The rowing machine.
We need Robbo,
Gibbs.
Craig and Gibbs.
Now that was 20 years ago when I did the ergo test.
Well, maybe you two can do a relay against Kieran,
Why?
because then maybe
Does
it's
he think
more-
he's good at it
He
then?
thinks he's really good at it.
Listen,
I'll
he's
tell you
wi-
what,
Listen,
the two of them,
Gibbs is wired to the moon, right? He'll beat him, and if I trained a bit, I'd beat him.
the two of them can go in the playoff and play the champ.
Yeah, but you were on water. I'd
I'm
like to see you on the
sorry.
run.
What's he, a
I've got the
champ?
trophy.
You're talking about polo now, not rowing, right?
When I had Gab as my Gab was my coach.
Champions
You
League final.
had Dan Thomas.
Champions League final.
Are you
row
proud
off,
in the rowing in
and I won.
Retiro?
I've got
But
the
you had a
trophy
motor in the
house.
back of yours.
So
You'd have had a motor.
Oh, I don't want to hear excuses.
But my boat was like
wanna
that.
hear
Gab was
excuses.
sitting in it.
The tonnage in his boat was certainly unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lucky.
good.
He's lucky he never went. He's lucky he never went down. He's
My
lucky he's here today.
oars weren't going in the water because the boat was like that.
It was one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time.
You don't realise.
Rob was sitting there like that, ready to
funny
go.
every time it comes up.
Well, Gab got in the boat and the number just disappeared. The number in the back of the boat just disappeared under the water. I was like that.
Okay, let's move. Stevie and Craig, start, bench or drop these three Scottish defenders. John Gregg, Billy McNeil, Alex McLeish.
But he'll go because he'll know more. It's more his time.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
his time, but he knows more than me. Then.
Listen, I'm a Rangers man, but I'm going to have to go with Billy McNeil to start. Big Caesar. Caesar was his nickname. I mean, captain Celtic to the old European Cup, now the Champions League. How many times did they win the league? I mean, just
9.
ridiculous.
9.
Yeah. So Billy McNeil would start. I'd have John Gregg on the bench again. Absolute legend at Rangers. Lifted the old Cup Winners' Cup in Europe for Rangers. Again, won plenty of titles. Was manager at Rangers, as was Billy McNeil, was manager at Celtic. And
Big
as
Eck
good
was
as,
manager at
and as
Rangers.
good as Big Eck was, unfortunately, Billy and John just outdo him.
I think Alec would agree with that.
I think he probably would.
Yeah.
All right, Stevie, what's the story of this picture on the golf cart? I like your popped collar. Picture will be coming off.
Eh?
If we can
There's
see
a
the
picture
picture.
of you with a popped collar
What's
on a
that?
golf cart.
Oh, no, the collar.
Oh, what is he like?
One of the Spice Boys there.
So I'm going to guess that was in South Africa.
So let me guess the players. That's Hutch next to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that Harkness?
Correct.
And the one on the far side with a red hard back.
Redknapp.
Oh, it's
Jamie
Jamie,
Redknapp.
isn't it?
Maybe
Redknapp.
Redknapp.
Bloody hell, I didn't know to start with.
No, the collar's up to keep the sun off the back of my neck.
You look $1 million there, don't you? What went
Tell you
wrong?
what, I've no idea. I've been asking myself that for a while, Robert.
Have you got any stories from this day?
I nearly killed Don. Because
We've all done that at some point.
For some reason, they let me drive, and we had gotten off the plane after enjoying ourselves on the plane, and decided to go golfing straight away. And then we had more refreshments, and I was driving, and I went over this bridge, and I just turned the car, and Don nearly went flying into this pond that had crocodiles and goodness knows what else on it. So I almost ended Mr. Don Hutchison on that particular trip.
Okay, nice picture. I'm all for these old pictures. Find more, please.
You know.
The belter, isn't it?
Yeah, we always end up talking about wildlife and ponds with you on Extra Time, it feels these days. What's your second favourite sport, guys? Craig?
Second favourite sport?
Like football?
Second favourite sport is football.
Because he's first, he's golf.
This is golf.
He's like Scotland, golf, football.
To play.
Over F1?
Oh yeah. In no particular order, football, Formula 1, Stevie loves that, and golf.
Formula One.
Golf.
Cricket would be mine.
Cricket?
Yeah, I love a bit of cricket. Yeah. Played a lot when I was a kid and still watch it. England lost this week to India in
Battered.
the second test. Battered, yes. Battered. Saw the first test was a great test. England came
When's
back
the next
Who's the
Ashes?
one?
soon.
In
It's-
England or Australia?
It's in Australia, is it? So we'll
And is
lose
that still- and,
5-0.
I used to watch now and again when I was back home, but is that still as big a rivalry as it was?
Yes. Yes, because England have more of a chance these days than they used to, because there was a little period where the Aussies won for, I think, almost 20 years. They dominated England. And then in 2005
5 and 9, I
Flintoff.
remember.
5 and 9,
Been
yeah,
amazing.
Flintoff, yeah, they were
Yeah.
great series. And England won both those series, and that sort of made it more even.
Cricket. Okay, Stevie?
Cool.
Oh,
Cool. Absolutely.
just not in the pub.
No, in the pub. Absolutely. Well, Moscone Cup's fantastic.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Great Britain against USA, magic.
Not a bit of
Well,
hurling.
sorry,
no?
Europe.
No, what's the one, the curling? Don't you play
Hurling.
that? A bit of curling?
No, too cold. Too cold. Nice warm pub. Nice
There's always a pub
nice
involved,
pool
isn't
table. Dim the lights. Here we go.
Off we go. Start, bench or drop international rivalry. England versus Scotland, Brazil versus Argentina, USA versus Mexico.
I saw somebody earlier on said, I'm not going to mention names, somebody they said Mexico versus the US is the greatest international rivalry on the planet.
Was it a colleague?
No.
Okay.
I mean, have you ever heard such nonsense? Well, there you go. Such is the world we live in. So that would be at the bottom on this particular one. I would say Brazil-Argentina is bigger rivalry than Scotland-England. As much as we like to build that.
But
up,
rivalries have to be a fairly even match. And at the last 20 years, Scotland haven't really matched England at football. So
no, it's not really a rivalry.
It's not really a
anymore.
rivalry
It used to
anymore.
be.
It used to be great. The one game that you used to have in England, and Scotland probably, on the TV, you had the FA Cup, which was shown live. The only other live game you ever saw, apart from a World Cup, would be England-Scotland. And Scotland...
You know what it was
won
called
that.
then?
Go on.
The Rouse Cup.
The Rouse Cup, yeah. After Sir Stanley Rouse.
I went to see Mariner playing it once. Well, I didn't go to see Paul, but he was playing. Because it was at the time when George Burley was around the Scotland scene, so I'd go as like a 12 or 13, you know, whatever it was, and Mariner, there he was, as you would expect. You know, one of the best around up front for England. He was like a machine then, Big Paul, up front, wasn't he?
I went to the Scotland-England game at Wembley, 1980, when Scotland were banned. 2 years previous, all the Scotland fans had gone to Wembley, ripped up the pitch at the end of the game,
Got on the crossbar.
got on the crossbar,
yeah.
broke the goals, took them out, carried them all home, grassed a lot. And so the English FA banned Scotland supporters from the 1980 Scotland-England game at Wembley.
But you went.
And I went. And so I'm walking up Wembley Way, and there's just tartan, lying rampants, just Scottish fans everywhere. And I'm like, this is unreal. I can't believe how many Scots are there. Get in, go up the top of the stairs, get right to the very top, and the whole Wembley opens up. You can see the whole field, the whole stadium. And there was a little pocket of about 10,000 England fans, and the rest of them were Scotland fans. There must have been, I mean, back then it would be what, 90, 100,000?
Yeah, 100,000.
There was at least, I'm going to say there was at least 80,000 Scotland supporters.
It was
there.
Scotland's
On a
biggest game of the year, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Scotland's
on a
biggest
game that they were banned. Unbelievable.
So you guys say Brazil, Argentina, England, Scotland, USA, Mexico?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know when you talk about friendlies, and you know, friendlies have been the sort of the bugbear of international football, which you know has changed to the Nations League and all that to try and you know give it a bit of life, which it has to an extent. But back then, that Scotland-England game, whether it be the year at Hampden or the year at Wembley, because
But they weren't. It was called. Was it the Home Nations Championship?
Nations.
Because Wales and Northern Ireland
Yeah,
also
but-
played in it.
Home
But that was the big game, wasn't it?
But it was still a friendly,
Yeah.
you know, per se. But it was never a friendly. I don't mean it was like horrible kicking each other and fighting, but it was, even the fans never saw it as a, you know, when nowadays you have friendlies, it's like, oh God, who cares who wins? It wasn't like that.
It was probably, along with the FA Cup final, the biggest audience on the TV for any football game.
Yeah.
England,
How
Scotland.
times have changed.
For the panel, a couple of days ago, brown sauce was mentioned as a condiment. As an American, what is that? gravy, Worcestershire
No, it's like a
sauce.
steak. It's like an A1
It's
steak
like- that's
sauce.
what- I actually answered that tweet earlier and said the closest thing is A1 steak sauce. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's
But
not
just
very,
not as good.
It's not close, but
No.
it's. Yeah, it's got a little bit of it, but it's different.
It's actually
tomato
it's
sauce.
tomato sauce that's
Made-
then got vinegar in it.
Vinegar and molasses.
Yeah,
Yes.
something that makes it go brown, but it's more tangy than tomato sauce. Otter.
Are you ketchup or brown sauce?
Ketchup.
Ah,
Nah, not brown sauce, man.
That was a silly
a little bit
question.
too spicy for Stevie.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit too
tangy's not-
exotic.
Tangy,
not
you're
bad, yeah.
not a tangy man.
No.
You ever seen anybody put brown sauce on chicken nuggets? Of course, it's ketchup. Isn't it? Ketchup.
Bacon sarnie, you've got to have brown sauce though.
Oh yeah.
No, you don't.
No. Well, will you eat it though?
No.
No. Okay.
It would spoil it.
For Stevie, this is an easy one for you then. Start, bench or drop, cheese and onion, salt and vinegar, or smoky bacon. What about crisps, chips?
He wouldn't bench any of them,
Yeah,
would he? He'd have the lower lot.
It's tight. It's tight between cheese and onion and smoky bacon. But I'm going to go cheese and onion. Smoky bacon in second place, and third is salt and vinegar. Clearly.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised. I thought
Yeah.
smoky bacon would have been down the bottom.
Yeah.
I've got to be loyal to
I bet you don't
cheese
kiss
and
your
onion.
wife after you've had your cheese and onion, do you?
Say that again.
I bet you don't kiss your wife after a cheese and onion crisp.
Why would I do that?
All right. We'll end it there then. Thank you so much for
I
sending
give
in
the
your
crisps a
questions.
kiss before I eat them.
Thank you so much for sending in your questions. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again.